Okay, let's get into this. You've brought us some really powerful source material today. It's from a text called Grace in the Grocery Aisle.
Yeah, it's quite something. It focuses right in on this one incident,
Mm.
a really tense moment in a super ordinary place, and then this, well, unexpected response.
Exactly. So that's our focus today.
All right.
Digging into this act of prejudice described in the text, and maybe more importantly, the really profound and unconventional way it was handled.
hmm And our mission really is to peel back the layers here, understand what the source tells us about the words, the actions, and I guess the impact it all had.
On the people right there, and maybe even wider.
Absolutely. How confronting these things with, well, dignity and truth can ripple outwards. That's what the source seems to suggest.
Okay, so let's jump in. The source sets the scene really clearly. Just a normal grocery store, small Ohio neighborhood, sunny afternoon.
Right, total routine. The hum of the refrigerators, people pushing carts, just
Yeah.
Tuesday.
A place where you just don't expect drama. But the source makes it clear that routine was about to break.
Yeah, it positions it near the produce section. And it introduces the two main people involved. First, an elderly woman.
Described as late 70s, maybe a bit impatient, the text mentions a faded cardigan, silver hair. Kind of unassuming, really.
Until she speaks, yeah. And then there's Daryl, a young black man, tall, casually dressed, hoodie, jeans.
And the source says he's just, walking towards the produce, looking at his phone, texting maybe. Calm, polite.
Just minding his own business.
Yeah.
And then bam, the source says the woman turns, sees him, and her whole expression just changes.
Yeah, it describes her eyes narrowing, lips pursing. You can almost picture it.
And then the words, loud, cutting through the store noise. The source quotes her, "You people don't belong here."
Wow. And Daryl just freezes, right? The source says he looks shocked.
And she doesn't stop there. Adds, "Why don't you go back to Africa where you came from?"
Oh, man. You can just imagine the air going out of the room. The source describes it vividly, the air thickening, shoppers stopping mid-step.
That normal rhythm
Yes.
just gone. People glancing, looking away, pretending they didn't hear. Awkward doesn't even cover it.
And the silence that follows is described as just heavy. Daryl's shock is there, but the source points to his pause.
Yeah, it's not immediate anger. It's like a slow breath. His face becomes unreadable, the source says, like he's weighing things.
Weighing the options, lashing out, yelling, just storming off, all probably flashing through his mind.
Must have been. But meanwhile, the woman, according to the text, she's just standing there, firm, unapologetic.
Like she expects no argument. And the tension is building. The source mentions other shoppers reacting now, a mom pulling her kid away, a guy looking nervous.
A crowd is starting to gather, drawn by the confrontation. The source even mentions like an employee stocking bananas, freezing, the cashier looking over. Everyone's watching.
And that pause from Daryl, the source really emphasizes it wasn't just inaction, it was processing.
Right, choosing a path. The source suggests he felt like anger or walking away wasn't. Right, not for this moment.
So instead, he contains it. The source says he shifts his basket, straightens up, his presence kind of grows.
Yeah, it does. And when he speaks, his voice isn't loud or angry. It's described as calm, deliberate, measured.
And he asks her, the source quotes, "Ma'am, do you even realize what you just said?"
And the source notes it wasn't accusatory, almost reflective, giving her a beat to maybe reconsider.
But she wasn't having it.
Not at all. The source says she snaps right back. "I said what I said." Defiant.
And doubles down again. "This is my country. People like you don't belong here."
Oof. You can almost hear the collective intake of breath from the other shoppers described in the text. A murmur goes around.
But Daryl stays steady, doesn't raise his voice, lets her words just hang there for everyone.
And then the source says he just nods slowly,
Mm-hmm.
calmly, almost disarming, really, given what was just thrown at him.
He says, "All right, let's talk about that since you brought it up."
That must have surprised everyone. The source describes the crowd becoming completely still.
He puts his basket down deliberately. Calm movements. Looks right at her. Not angry, but with this, quiet determination.
Yeah, resolute is a good word. And he decides to meet her statement head on. "You said I don't belong here?" he starts, voice steady.
Yeah.
"Let me tell you where I come from."
And this is the core of it, isn't it? The source details this impromptu history lesson right there in the aisle.
Right, he talks about his great-great-grandfather, born in Mississippi, sharecropper.
Whose father, Daryl says, was a slave. Kidnapped, beaten, sold like property. But worked, the source emphasizes, to help build this country.
Imagine hearing that. The source says the woman's face tightens, but she's silent. The crowd, Completely focused. Phone's down, leaning
He
in.
keeps going, tells the story of his grandfather, fought in World War II for the U.S.
Fought for this country, yeah. Only to come back and be treated, as the source puts it, like dirt.
Can't sit at the same counter, drink from the same fountain, but he stayed. Why? Because he believed in this country's promise.
The source describes this hush falling. Like even the store's background noise just faded out. Powerful stuff.
Then he talks about his parents. His voice softens a bit here, the source notes, but the conviction is still there.
They fought too, he says. Not with guns, but through work. Raising him with kindness, respect, hard work.
His mom's a teacher, helping all kids. Dad's a mechanic, helps anyone. Just decent people contributing.
He lets all that history, that personal story, just sink in for a moment. Then he brings it back to her words.
Yeah, the source says his voice carries the weight of all those generations. Maybe a touch of sadness, too.
And here's the direct quote from the source, his conclusion. So you're telling me I don't belong here, that I should go back to Africa? Ma'am, I am as much a part of this country as you are, maybe even more because my family paid the price for it in blood, sweat, and tears.
Wow. The source says the woman's face flushes bright red. Her hands are trembling. She's speechless.
Totally speechless, and the crowd is just transfixed. That silence returns, but it feels different now, heavy with his words.
And the source describes Daryl stepping back then, composed. Before anyone else can really react, he turns slightly, addresses the crowd.
Yeah, he says he could have just walked away. We all might have. But then he says, and the source quotes this too, ignorance doesn't get better in silence. It's up to all of us to be better than this.
And that's when the silence breaks. A middle-aged man steps forward, emotional, saying, "He's right. We've got to be better than this."
Another woman chimed in, an older woman, nodding. Says her father fought in the same war, WWII.
And always said, the only color that mattered was the red on the flag. Nice line.
Yeah. And then the young cashier, the source says she calls out from her register, clearly moved. I've never seen anyone handle something like that so gracefully. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the elderly woman is described as just flustered, clutching her cart. She tries to say something like a quiet apology.
Yeah, the source catches it as, I didn't mean, but it trails off. Incomplete, barely audible.
And Daryl turns back to her. His expression is gentler now, the source notes.
And he responds, it's not about what you meant, it's about how it came across. Words matter. Actions matter even more.
Powerful distinction. And then the applause starts.
Hesitant at first. Right, a guy from the deli claps slowly. Then someone else. And it just builds.
Swells into something, as the source puts it, undeniable. And it notes it wasn't just for the history lesson.
No, it was for the courage, the dignity, standing there, facing that hate, and choosing grace, truth.
And the woman, she just looks around, face pale, and quietly pushes her cart towards the exit, visibly distressed as she leaves.
Yeah, the source paints a picture of her making a quiet retreat. As she goes, a few people approach Daryl.
A woman puts a hand on his shoulder, thanks him, and Daryl, picking up his basket again, reflects quietly.
The source captures his thought. Sometimes it's not about winning or losing, it's about making sure people hear the truth.
The crowd breaks up slowly after that, but the source suggests something shifted in that store, in the people who saw it.
Yeah, the feeling was different afterwards. Quieter, maybe. More thoughtful, the text suggests. Daryl finishes his shopping, reflective.
And at the checkout, that same young cashier talks to him again, tells him his words really meant something.
Said people don't always stand up like that. Or, with that kind of composure.
And Daryl's response to her is another key bit from the source, isn't it? He says, sometimes grace is the only way to break through. Anger just builds walls.
That's a powerful takeaway right there. Grace breaks through. Anger builds walls.
The source adds another little detail, him seeing the woman in her car in the parking lot. He thinks about going over.
But decides against it. The source frames it as an insight. Some lessons need time to settle. He planted a seed, now let it be.
Later he tells his father, and his dad's reaction. Listens intently.
And then just says, you did the right thing, son. Plant the seed and let it grow. Simple, powerful advice.
It seems like Daryl really took that to heart, realizing that confronting ignorance, even if it's uncomfortable, is vital. Silence lets it fester.
Exactly. It might not change things instantly, but speaking truth with conviction, calmly, that has power, lasting power.
And the source even gives us a peek into the woman's perspective later. Sitting at home, his words are replaying in her head.
Yeah, described as cutting through the armor of her assumptions. She thinks of her grandkids, feels this unfamiliar pang of doubt.
So not an instant conversion, but the beginning of something, a crack in the certainty.
And the story itself spreads, doesn't it? Through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Becomes like a local legend almost.
More than gossip, though. The source calls it a lesson, a reminder. It sparked conversations.
People talking about prejudice, history, what it means to stand up. And Daryl, though he wasn't seeking it, felt the ripples.
Strangers thanking him, sharing their own stories.
Exactly. His actions gave others courage, or maybe just validation. And the woman, the source suggests she did start to question things more deeply over time.
No overnight miracle, but a slow shift. It even mentions her hoping she'd see him again to apologize properly.
Which really brings us back to the core message from this source material, doesn't it? These moments show the power of, well, kindness, strength, and truth against ignorance.
Yeah, that standing up doesn't have to be loud or aggressive. It can be calm, rooted in conviction.
And that our words, our actions, they always matter. They ripple out. They can hurt or they can heal, divide, or maybe, just maybe, start to unite.
So if we boil down this deep dive, the story from Grace in the grocery aisle, it's a striking example, isn't it? How choosing dignity and truth instead of just anger can resonate far beyond the initial moment.
It really wasn't just about winning an argument in an aisle. It was about planting that seed of change, like his father said, a seed that kept growing.
Which leaves us with something to think about, drawn right from the source. This idea that standing up for what's right doesn't always mean raising your voice.
Right. Sometimes it's about speaking calmly, with that deep conviction, and trusting the truth itself to do the work, allowing it to land.
So how does that idea resonate with you, the listener? How might that approach apply to difficult or challenging moments you might face? Something to reflect on.